Hi, I'm Ashy, and today we are going to do some sketchbook practice, basically. And so the purpose of today is I want to sketch a photo that I took while on vacation with my kids. And so this is kind of urban sketching on-site vibe, but taking it home because I didn't have time to do it there. But I really liked this picture of my kids, so I wanted to capture it, but loosely in my sketchbook. So let's go ahead and flow right into it. I'm going to start with just this Pigma Micron pen. So this is a 0.5, and so it's fairly fine point, but not like crazy fine point. And this is a brown color. I think it's literally just called brown, but for some reason it doesn't say the name on it of the color, which I find interesting. But it's this reddish brown color, and I really like it for sketching. So we're gonna start by just jumping right in to the sketch. And the whole point of this is it's a sketchbook. It's not gonna be perfect, and I'm not gonna worry about it. So I do have my reference photo, which I'll put up on the screen so that you can see it. And it's just of my kids. And I want to make sure that I'm capturing both of them with enough space in the back to get some of the cliffs. So I'm just going to kind of mark out first their heights. So my older daughter is going to be about a third up the page for the top of her head. Okay, so I got to make sure that I don't go past that. And then actually my younger daughter is the same. So that's one thing with drawing people is if you're straight on at them, their heads are pretty much all going to be at the same height, but they're going to be smaller in the background. So I'm going to put her just a little higher, but not much. Okay. And then we're going to start by just sketching out my daughter that's in front. So just gonna get her head in. And so just loosely getting in the shape of her hair first with broken brush strokes, nothing crazy. Okay. And then she has sunglasses on. So we're gonna put in some bangs and her sunglasses. Okay. And then just get in the hint of her nose and her mouth. Okay, the side of her face is going to come down from the sunglasses and then angle into her chin. And then this side's going to look a little bit more rounded. There we go. And then we have kind of her shirt here. And then I can draw in her neck and shoulder. And this side, her hair kind of comes in front of her shoulder. So I'm going to get that drawn in. Before I add in more of her clothes. Okay, same with this side, just a little bit of hair. Okay. All right, now we can get in kind of the rest of her body. So we have her shoulder here. You can't really see this back arm. It's kind of just, she's turned sideways. So that's going to be kind of straight down. And just kind of make it a little bit wiggly so that it looks like some wrinkles in the shirt. And then this arm's going to come down from basically the same spot as her edge of her face is. Okay. and just kind of getting in basic shape of an arm. So trying to get in some curves, because obviously our limbs aren't straight. We have muscles in them. So just kind of use that. Simple curves to create the sections of the arm. Okay, her shirt's gonna go kind of just below her elbow here. And then we have her legs. So we have a curve for her thigh, and then a little bump for her knee, and then it goes behind the other leg. And so her other leg kind of comes here. Again, curve, little bump for the knee, and then it's gonna kind of curve forward a little bit. There we go. Okay. And then I gotta get the rest of her arm in and her hand. So we're gonna narrow to the wrist and then kind of do a little, almost, is it a trapezoid shape, maybe? So kind of angle out and then little bumps for the fingers and then the thumb. Okay. And then I'm going to put in the back of her leg here. So coming down toward the knee. So a curve in and then a curve for the calf. Okay. Now her second hand does kind of peek out from her shirt here. So we're going to get her arm in and then her hand kind of angles out and back in. So this is just basically like a triangle, and then add the fingers and then put a little curve for the thumb. And it doesn't have to be precise, okay? That's kind of the key. It's small, number one, and number two, it's just a sketch and it's not that big of a deal, okay? So there is my older daughter who's in front, and then we're gonna put in my younger daughter who's in back. So the top of her head's gonna kind of be here, and I gotta make sure that I'm drawing her smaller, okay? So same idea though, we're gonna start with the head and work our way down. And sometimes I start with the feet and work my way up. It doesn't really matter. So like actually maybe I'll do that here because I know that I want her feet to kind of be at the level of my older daughter's like shirt sleeve here. So we're gonna put in the first foot here, and it's just a little tennis shoe. So kind of get in that shape. Okay. And then her other foot is going to be a little bit below that and in front, or to show that it's in front, and it's angled a different direction. So we're going to get in the tongue there, and then kind of the side of the shoe. And it kind of comes this way, and then it's just like a curve here. Okay. It's quite a bit bigger than the other one, but that's okay. And just do some marks to indicate where the laces are. Okay. And then we go up to our legs. So we have really wrinkly leggings. So I need to make sure that her waist, so where the pants end, is kind of at my daughter's chin or mouth level. Okay, so kind of right here. Okay, so I'm gonna put in that curve for the pants, and these proportions might look super funky. We'll see. I'm doing my best. So just kind of wiggly little lines for the legs. Okay. And I have a little bump here for kind of the knee. Okay. And then the back one, kind of just curves out toward the foot. There we go. Good enough. Again, the proportions might look a little funky, but that's okay. And then her shirt, and her head's gonna end up being way higher than what I had here. That's okay. Kind of some wrinkles in the shirt. Get in the arm there. And shoulder. And this side, same thing. Get in the sleeve there. Okay, now I can draw in her arms. So just a V there for where the elbow is. And then kind of curve it on the bottom. Kind of a pointy curve, but curve nonetheless. Up to a wrist. I'll deal with the hand in a second. This arm's kind of hiding behind a little bit, so you're going to see the shirt, but not the other part of the arm. And then it comes out for the elbow. And up to a wrist. Okay. And then her hand is, she's making some weird gesture with her hand, but I'll try my best to mimic that. So her hand's pointing off to the side, and she's got a curve here for her thumb. It's not gonna look right, but that's okay. And she's pointing at something, probably nothing. And then her other fingers are curved. Okay, good enough. And her other hand, we just have the thumb here, and then she's kind of pointing with that one too, and her other fingers are curved. So kind of just make it up. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's small enough that it doesn't matter that much, okay? Even if it looks funky, once we start painting, it'll be fine. At least that's what I tell myself. Okay, her neck. Okay, her chin. Mouth. Nose. She's also got sunglasses on. You can really only see the one side because her hair's in front of the other one. So her hair comes down in front of her face a bit. So we have kind of her bangs there, and then kind of comes down to her shoulder. She's got curly hair. So I'm just doing more wiggly lines than I did on my other daughter. And then I'm just going to put the hint of these other sunglasses in. There we go. All right. So, is it perfect? Absolutely not. Does it work? Sure. Again, this is just a quick sketch to capture a memory. It's not going to be 100% accurate by any means. All right, so then they're on a path. So I'm gonna draw in the sides of the path here. And it's gonna go kind of off the page. And curve around. There we go. And then we're gonna have our cliffs in the background. So I'm just gonna kind of arbitrarily mark out a point where the cliffs start, loosely going off the reference photo, but not exactly. Okay. So this is gonna be kind of like scrub brush and dirt and rocks, and then we're gonna have our cliffs coming up. We do have some, this is like Native American ruins, basically. It's called Bandelier National Monument, I think is what it's called. And so there's some ruins here. So I'm gonna get in some more geometric marks to indicate those. And again, just loosely, not worrying about it being too accurate to what I'm seeing. And then there's gonna be some foliage here, like a little bush thing, which I'm just basically doing scribbles. And then once I add some of the green to it, it's going to make sense. Some branches. And this color is really nice because this is a desert site, basically. So this color is really nice because it is gonna blend right in with the paint colors that I'm using for the desert, which is kind of cool. Okay, and then we have a cliff here coming up into the sky. And then we're gonna have a little bit of sky right here and these other cliffs in the background. Okay, and I'm just gonna add some kind of textural marks here for some of the cliffs. So it's literally just lines. And then that's gonna show where there's more sheer cliff faces versus the more rocky ones, which are gonna be more jaggedy, right? So just kind of adding some jagged marks. This is gonna be shadowed in here. I'll do that with paint though. Okay, and then we have some more kind of ridges in this cliff here. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of some ink to distinguish where those things are happening. Okay. Now it looks really messy and everything right now, and that's fine, and it might end up looking messy, and that's also fine. So I'm just gonna wake up my paints real quick. And I'm gonna start with a squirrel hair brush. This is a size 0, so it's not very large, but this is a small paper. And I'm gonna start by getting in some sky color here. So it's just cobalt blue. And it can just be placed in loosely. Okay, now I'm gonna mix up kind of a path color. So I'm gonna use some yellow ochre mixed with whatever was in this, which is some different like reds and oranges, but mostly yellow ochre. And then I'm gonna loosely put that on the path. Little bit of burnt sienna, add some texture. and some shadow. The shadow I'm doing burnt sienna mixed with ultramarine. And it's very wet, so it's going to bleed a lot. And then I just have a rag that I like to keep on hand to dry my brush and to dab up anything if it's getting out of control. Okay, I'm going to come up into the cliffs now, and I want to make them pretty red. So I'm going to use, we'll use alizarin crimson, which is still kind of a pinky red, but it's red, mixed with my yellow ochre to make it orange, but it's going to be a pretty reddish color, and we're just going to brush that in to the cliffs. And I'm leaving white space. I'm not worrying about it being all covered. And then I'm going to add in some of my same shadow mix with the ultramarine into the darkest areas. And just add some shadows. And I'm just using the tip of the brush. It holds a lot of water, so it's not super controlled, and it's kind of a floppy brush. It's not, doesn't hold its shape, which for natural features like these cliffs, I don't mind, because I want it to be like bouncy and uneven, and I don't want to have it be too precise. And I'm doing this into this wet paint, so it's going to bleed out some. And kind of soften some of these edges. More blue to make it darker. Okay, just adding another layer of the light red to add a little bit of depth and shadows to some of these areas. All right, now this is going to be more of like a really neutral green. So I'm going to add that same red in to my green well to make basically a brown, but it's got kind of a hint of green to it, and I can add a little bit more green in some spots. A little bit more ochre, some of the red, just to get some variety. Okay, add some olive green for the little shrub here. Maybe add some more thick olive green to some other areas so that that's repeated, but it's not as much of a focus because I didn't draw these in, right? So we just have some areas where it indicates that there's some plants, but it's not as obvious as this one that I drew in. But I can take just a little bit of kind of concentrated burnt sienna and add some hints of some branches if I want. Okay. There we go. Now I'm going to add just a little bit of some of that green up into this cliff that's on the top, because it's the top of a hill basically, and so it has some shrubs growing on it as well. Add a little bit more concentrated green since it's blending with that red there. Okay, and then I'm going to add a little bit of that same mix here to this side of the path. Okay. There we go. Now I'm going to switch to a brush that doesn't hold as much water. So this is a squirrel hair. I'm going to switch to this Degato round. It's a size 10, so it's still pretty big, but it doesn't hold as much water. And I'm going to paint in the clothes. So we're going to get some purples here for my daughter in the front. She has on some pants with like a purple pattern on them. So it's like purple and gray. I'm going to add in some darker purples to some areas. I think that there's some blues in it too, so I'm just going to take some cobalt and add in some blues as well. Okay, and then some Payne's Gray, especially where it's shadowed here on her back leg. and kind of along the top. Just kind of tapping that in between some areas as well, because they are gray pants. Okay. And then I'm going to come and do some cobalt for my other daughter's pants. And I'm doing this loosely, and then I'm going to tap in some yellows, because I think they have like a floral pattern or something on them. Okay. So then I'm just going to take some concentrated yellow so that it doesn't bleed out too much, and tap it in. It's also, the yellow is opaque, so it can go over the blue a little bit. Okay. Add just a little bit more darkness on the inside of her legs where there'd be more shadow. Now for her shirt, it's striped and purple, so I'm going to take just some of this purple, make sure I don't have too much water on my brush, and try to paint in kind of a stripe pattern. And so it can be jaggedy because there's folds in the shirt, so it doesn't have to be, in fact it shouldn't be straight lines across. Okay. Add a touch more darkness to it, just to make it stand out a little bit more. So I'm just tapping in some wet paint. Give that a second, and then I might lift up a little bit of that. And then her shirt's a very pale yellow, so I'm just going to add a lot of water to my yellow and paint her shirt that color. Okay. I'm just going to lift up a touch. There we go. That way it gets a gradient, but it's not super dark. All right, now the sunglasses are like a, I'm going to use cerulean. They're kind of a turquoisey color, but I'm just going to use cerulean and paint them in. I got a lot of paint on my brush, but that's okay. Let's use the tip. Okay, I'm just going to say that they had the same sunglasses even though they didn't. Okay. And for a skin color, I'm going to add just a little bit more pink into my yellow ochre here, and then just a touch of green to mute it down and put that over our skin. It's not going to be much color. Oops. Got some blue in from her pants. That's okay. Problem with not waiting for things to dry. Add just a little bit of purple for a shadow on the neck. Maybe in the arm over here. Okay. Now I'm gonna paint some shoes. So we're gonna use some alizarin crimson for her shoes. And then maybe some gray for the bottom. There we go. Okay, now I do want to put a little bit of gray in to the lenses of the sunglasses. So making sure that it's dark enough. There we go. The blue's bleeding into her face a little bit. Dry it out. Go back and add that dark again. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry for a minute before I add her face color again because it was just bleeding too much. Let me go in and paint this now. So it's gonna be a similar reddish hue as the cliffs, but I do want it to stand out a little bit, so I'm gonna make it a little bit more yellow. Need to make it more concentrated. And then I think I'm going to add some texture with my pen after it dries. I'm going to add just a little bit more shadow under here, under the kids, just to define it a little bit more. There we go. And maybe a little bit of some green textural marks here. Okay, I need to paint their hair in, so I'm just going to use some of the yellow ochre basically. Hers is going to have a little bit more of a reddish hue to it. Okay. Adding back in the face color a little bit more. That's too much. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take a moment to dry it real quick, and then I'll add the ink in, and then I should be done. Okay, so now that it's dry, I'm just gonna take my pen again and add some details to the ruins here. So it's basically just little rocks. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of texture. So just some very minimal vertical marks and horizontal marks. Just to add some definition there. So basically it's just like little dots. I'm gonna do just a little bit of very light hatching, just to add some shadow. So just diagonal marks, thin lines. Okay. All right. And then I'm just going to add a little bit more to the skin tone here. So making sure it's a nice light wash. A little bit of purple for the shadow. Deepen that up a tad. Touch more to the hair. There we go. And basically that's it. So again, it's a quick sketch. It's in my sketchbook. It's not supposed to be like a masterpiece or anything, but I think I captured the difference between my kids. Very calm, very expressive, and I like some of the textures that I got in the cliffs. Again, it's just mark making and loose movement basically, but it gets that idea of kind of towering verticals with some of the lines going up, and then just a little bit of shading. So that is it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and it just gives you some inspiration to get your sketchbook out and try to draw something that maybe you might not be so practiced or comfortable with, like me with figures. I do them, but not super often, and so it's always a little bit of hit or miss. So if you liked the video, please consider giving it a like. It would help the video a lot. And check out my channel for tons more content. I have a lot of real-time tutorials in watercolor and informational type content, so check it out and subscribe for more. Thank you so much. Until next time, keep those paints flowing.